There are many types of security threats that attackers can use to exploit insecure applications. Threat actors can run some of these attacks using automated software, while others require a more active role from attackers. In this tutorial, we will explain the basic idea behind a man-in-the-middle attack, providing examples and mitigation techniques. What is a man-in-the-middle attack? A man-in-the-middle attack is a type of cyber attack in which the attacker secretly intercepts and relays messages between two parties who believe they are communicating directly with each other. The attack is a type of eavesdropping in which the attacker intercepts and then controls the entire conversation. Man-in-the-middle cyber attacks pose a serious threat to online security because they give the attacker the ability to capture and manipulate sensitive personal information, such as login credentials, account details, or credit card numbers in real time. Man-in-the-middle attacks are also sometimes referred to as monster-in-the-middle, machine-in-the-middle, monkey-in-the-middle, and man-in-the-browser attacks. Man-in-the-browser is the most common type of man-in-the-middle attack in which the attackers focus on browser infection and inject malicious proxy malware into the victim's device. The malware is commonly introduced through phishing emails. The main objective behind these attacks is to steal financial information by intercepting a user's traffic to a banking or financial website. How do man-in-the-middle attacks work? During man-in-the-middle attacks, cybercriminals insert themselves in the middle of data transactions or online communication. Through the distribution of malware, the attacker gains easy access to the user's web browser and the data it sends and receives during transactions. Online banking and e-commerce sites, which require secure authentication with a public key and a private key, are the prime targets of man-in-the-middle attacks, as they enable attackers to capture login credentials and other confidential information. These attacks are carried out through a two-step process known as data interception and decryption. Data interception entails an attacker intercepting a data transfer between a client and a server. The attacker tricks the client and the server into believing that they are exchanging information with each other, while the attacker intercepts the data, creates a connection to the real site, and acts as a proxy to read and insert false information into the communication. The following steps are involved in a common data interception technique. An attacker installs a packet sniffer to gauge any network traffic that might be insecure, such as a user accessing a hypertext transfer protocol-based website or using a non-secure public hotspot. Once the user logs into the insecure website, the attacker retrieves the user's information and redirects them to a fake website. The fake website mimics the original website and gathers all the pertinent user data, which the attacker can then use to access all the user resources on the original website. The decryption phase is where the intercepted data is unencrypted. This essential step enables the attacker to finally decipher and use the data to their advantage. For example, they can carry out identity theft or cause disruptions to business operations. Man-in-the-middle attack techniques. Sniffing. Attackers use packet capture tools to inspect packets at a low level. Using specific wireless devices that are allowed to be put into monitoring or promiscuous mode can allow an attacker to see packets that are not intended for it to see, such as packets addressed to other hosts. Packet injection. An attacker can also leverage their device's monitoring mode to inject malicious packets into data communication streams. The packets can blend in with valid data communication streams, appearing to be part of the communication, but malicious in nature. Packet injection usually involves first sniffing to determine how and when to craft and send packets. Session hijacking. Most web applications use a login mechanism that generates a temporary session token to use for future requests. To avoid requiring the user to type a password at every page, an attacker can sniff sensitive traffic to identify the session token for a user and use it to make requests as the user. The attacker does not need to spoof once he has a session token. SSL stripping. Since using HTTPS is a common safeguard against ARP or DNS spoofing, attackers use SSL stripping to intercept packets and alter their HTTPS-based address requests to go to their HTTP equivalent endpoint, forcing the host to make requests to the server unencrypted. Sensitive information can be leaked in plain text. Types of man-in-the-middle attacks. A man-in-the-middle attack in cybersecurity qualifies as any circumstance where a threat actor places themselves between a user and an entity such as a network, website, or application to obtain information. The method by which hackers obtain that information varies using different forms of spoofing. A method of impersonating trusted online entities or websites. The main types of man-in-the-middle attacks include IP spoofing. A cybercriminal alters the Internet Protocol address of a website, email address, or device and spoofs the entity, making the user think they're interacting with a trusted source when they're really passing information to a malicious actor. DNS spoofing. For DNS spoofing, a spammer creates and operates a fake website that the user is familiar with and routes them to it to acquire user credentials or other information. HTTPS spoofing. A user assumes a website has the Hypertext Transfer Protocol secure, meaning they have their computer data encrypted to the website host. However, they were secretly redirected to a non-secure HTTP website, allowing criminals to track interactions and steal information. Email hijacking. Attackers secretly gain access to a banking or credit card company's email accounts to monitor transactions and steal information. They might also use the email account or a spoofed email address slightly different from the actual one to provide false instructions to the customers, such as wiring money into a new checking account. Wi-Fi eavesdropping. Spammers create public Wi-Fi networks or hotspots that appear to be a nearby business or other trusted source. Users who connect then have all their activity and sensitive data intercepted. Secure sockets layer hijacking, an extension of HTTPS spoofing. Hijacking the SSL is when a hacker takes this protocol responsible for encrypting HTTPS connections and intercepts user data traveling between them and the server they're connecting to. Session hijacking, commonly known as browser cookie theft. An attacker will steal information stored on web browser cookies, such as saved passwords. Cache poisoning, also known as Address Resolution Protocol, or ARP cache poisoning. This popular modern-day man-in-the-middle attack enables cybercriminals who are on the same subnet as the victims to eavesdrop on all traffic being routed between them. Man-in-the-middle attack prevention. Blocking man-in-the-middle attacks requires several practical steps on the part of users, as well as a combination of encryption and verification methods for applications. For users, this means avoiding Wi-Fi connections that aren't password protected, paying attention to browser notifications reporting a website as being unsecured, immediately logging out of a secure application when it's not in use, not using public networks, for example, coffee shops, hotels, when conducting sensitive transactions. For website operators, secure communication protocols, including TLS and HTTPS, help mitigate spoofing attacks by robustly encrypting and authenticating transmitted data. Doing so prevents the interception of site traffic and blocks the decryption of sensitive data, such as authentication tokens. It is considered best practice for applications to use SSL or TLS to secure every page of their site, and not just the pages that require users to log in. Doing so helps decreases the chance of an attacker stealing session cookies from a user browsing on an unsecured section of a website while logged in. How to detect a man-in-the-middle attack? Because man-in-the-middle attacks rely on elements more closely associated with other cyber attacks, such as phishing or spoofing, malicious activities that employees and users may already have been trained to recognize and thwart. Man-in-the-middle attacks might, at first glance, seem easy to spot. However, given the escalating sophistication of cybercriminals, detection should include a range of protocols, both human and technical. As with all cyber threats, prevention is key. The following are signs that there might be malicious eavesdroppers on your network and that a man-in-the-middle attack is underway. Unusual disconnections, unexpected or repeated disconnections from a service. When a user is oddly kicked out of a service and must sign in again and again, are usually a sign of a man-in-the-middle attempt or attack. Cybercriminals seek as many opportunities to scrape usernames and passwords, and while having to repeatedly enter a username and password might seem like a minor inconvenience to the user, this is an action man-in-the-middle attackers need to happen over and over again to be successful. Strange URLs. In a spoofing scam, cybercriminals create bogus websites that look identical to recognizable, trusted ones to lure victims into entering their credentials. In the man-in-the-middle version of this attack, the web page delivered to the user in their browser is a spoofed site, and the URL in the address window is clearly not the recognizable address of the trusted site or application. Man-in-the-middle attackers use a DNS hijack so that users will interact and engage with the spoofed site while malicious code intercepts their messages and collects their data. For any and all personal financial transactions, users should carefully examine the web pages of their financial institutions to determine if something seems unfamiliar. Public, unsecured Wi-Fi. Public Wi-Fi available from unfamiliar establishments should be avoided if possible. This is different from municipal Wi-Fi, which is free connectivity offered by cities so residents can connect to the Internet. Even if users do not perform banking transactions or other tasks involving sensitive data on a public Wi-Fi, a man-in-the-middle attack can still send malicious code to a device to eavesdrop on chats and messages. Criminals are known to use innocent-sounding Wi-Fi network names such as local free wireless. So beware. Attackers may be offering free connectivity, but they observe all of the user's activity, too. But how do criminals get in the middle? The first step is to compromise the Internet router, which they can do with tools that scan for unpatched flaws or other vulnerabilities. Next, they intercept and decrypt the victim's transmitted data using various techniques. A basic method is sniffing, in which attackers deploy tools that inspect packets, units of data that are transferred over a network. These can intercept unencrypted information, such as passwords and usernames. Attackers might also perform packet injection, in which malicious packets are inserted into data communication streams to disrupt victims' ability to use certain network services or protocols. A similar version of this attack is session hijacking, or cookie hijacking. The criminal sniffs sensitive traffic to identify the victim's session token. With that information, the attacker uses source-routed IP packets to intercept data as it's being transferred from the victim's computer to the server and make requests, as though they were the user. Finally, cybercriminals attempting to intercept traffic from an HTTPS website might conduct an SSL stripping attack. This involves intercepting packets and altering their address to direct the victim to the less secure HTTP equivalent. HTTP pages don't encrypt information as it's being shared, meaning the attacker can sniff information and perform packet injection. How to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. Update and secure home Wi-Fi routers. This is perhaps the most important, as work-from-home policies usually mandate that employees use a home router to connect to the Internet to access the corporate network. Wi-Fi router software, known as firmware, should be updated from time to time. This process needs to be carried out manually because firmware updates are not automatic. Also, make sure that the router's security settings are set to the strongest, which according to the Wi-Fi Alliance, is currently WPA3. Use a virtual private network when connecting to the Internet. VPNs encrypt the data traveling between the devices and the VPN server. Encrypted traffic is harder to modify. Use end-to-end encryption. Where possible, instruct employees to turn on encryption for emails and other communication channels. For added security, only use communication software that offers encryption right out of the box. Some applications automatically turn on encryption in the background, such as WhatsApp Messenger, for example. However, if employees wish to verify that their messages are indeed encrypted, they will need to carry out a special process, such as scanning and comparing QR codes available in the WhatsApp application on each person's phone. Install patches and use antivirus software. These might be basic cybersecurity practices, but they are worth mentioning because they are easy to forget. Further, employees are now responsible for ensuring that all patches are installed and security software is updated on their devices. IT staff may need to explain the importance of this to employees to strengthen endpoint security. Use strong passwords and a password manager. Because passwords are not going away anytime soon, encourage employees to use strong passwords and a password manager. For company-owned devices, IT staff can install mobile device management software that features a password policy with rules pertaining to password length, use of special characters, aging, history/reuse, and the maximum number of password attempts before the device is remotely wiped. If available, deploy multi-factor authentication, so you do not rely on passwords alone. Organizations should encourage the use of multi-factor authentication for access to devices and online services. This practice has quickly become organizations' best defense against threats. Only connect to secure websites. This means look for a tiny padlock icon all the way to the left of the website URL in the browser's address bar. It is a sign that the web page you are visiting is secure and using the HTTPS protocol. For security, employees, and web users overall, should never connect to regular HTTP sites or ones that do not have the padlock icon visible. To ensure this, users can consider installing a free browser plugin that can enforce this rule. Further, most comprehensive cybersecurity platforms include web filtering protocols that restrict employees from accessing non-HTTPS sites. Encrypt DNS traffic. The DNS is the Internet's distributed directory service. Applications use DNS to resolve a domain name to an IP address. However, when the DNS wants to connect to the external recursive DNS resolver, privacy and security become an issue because the DNS is distributed and no single security protocol exists. The handful of mechanisms that have emerged, including DNS over TLS and DNS queries over HTTPS, encrypt DNS traffic between the user's computer and the external DNS resolver to validate the resolver's authenticity using certificates to ensure that no other party can impersonate the resolver. Adopt the Zero Trust philosophy. Zero Trust is a security concept that requires organizations to not automatically trust anything inside or outside its perimeters. Instead, they must first verify anything trying to connect to their systems before granting access. The model is never trust, always verify, and it relies on continuous verification across every device, user, and application. Zero Trust approaches can prevent a man-in-the-middle attack from starting or can protect an organization's assets if a man-in-the-middle attack is already underway.